All right, what is going on? How's it going?
Hi. Good. How's it going with you?
Oh man, it is so awesome. Thank you very much for taking the time today. I didn't even think about it until just now. I apologize to have to be over the phone and squishing you guys together, but
Oh, it's okay. It's
luckily you
all
guys are
good.
close though, right?
Yeah. You can hear us
Doesn't make
okay? We're
Yeah,
good?
yep.
Okay, cool.
Everything's good. Yep. No, I
Cool.
appreciate it. This is absolutely awesome. I don't know what kind of weather you guys are having, but today is like our first day that we have snow here in Michigan, so it's like kind of a drag, but then also like kind of time to start digging into like maybe some The Thing or Silent Night, Deadly Night type shit. Start
Yeah.
breaking out those. So,
Yeah. I actually live in the mountains, so it's snowed earlier this
oh,
week for
okay.
us. Yeah.
Damn. Okay.
Yeah.
Wild.
I
Well.
live about 40 minutes from Casey, so her and I have like completely different weather right now. Like by my house, it's like sunny and warm. So
Oh,
it's
okay.
a really drastic difference between that like drive.
Yeah. Jeez. Yeah, and that's not all that far. I mean, so where are you guys? Are you guys in Texas?
No,
California.
California.
Oh, Cal. Shit. I don't know why I thought because I think I even wrote that in my notes. I thought maybe there was like
Yeah,
something
I
that you guys
noticed
had mentioned
that.
in an episode, something about Texas. So you're not even in
Yeah.
Texas. What the fuck am I
No,
talking
nope.
about?
We're in
Unreal.
California.
Wow. Okay. No kidding. Okay. Well then, we'll scratch that part. I don't know where I wrote that down or where I got that from, but awesome. Okay. So
It's all good.
yeah. So obviously, your guys and your show, before digging into that and like all of the fun that you guys have and digging into breaking down horror movies yourselves. Where, as an introduction, where does the genre get introduced to you and film kind of at large as far as early on in life? And your first horror movie that you guys had seen.
Do you want to go first?
Sure. Um, my introduction was from my dad, and he'll even tell you that he didn't have the best parental guidance on what he allowed my little brother and I to watch. And
Okay.
the first movie I ever saw was my dad put on Child's Play, and I think I was like 3 or 4. And he's like, "Yeah, you and your little brother can come sit right here next to me, and we'll watch it." And that started like a 5 year fear of dolls, which then my
God.
mom decided to buy porcelain dolls for me as a kid. So it was, I lived my own horror movie growing up.
God damn. This see, like for some reason, I don't know how it ever even happened. Like going over to a grandma's or even like your parents having porcelain dolls. Like where was there ever a draw to those things? I have
I
never
have no
understood.
idea.
Like how do people love these? They're absolutely terrifying, even
Well,
if
and
you're
then
not
some
afraid
of
of
them
dolls.
play. There's some of them play music too. Like my mom, she was like, "Oh, I found one that looked like
Uh,
you. It literally looks like me in doll form." And then it twisted up and it played "You Are My Sunshine." And sometimes, when houses settled, they would
That's
shift.
terrifying.
So in the middle of the night, you would just hear
oh
like this
God.
music box slowly play. It was horrifying.
Yeah, no shit. Wow. I mean, there's like just figures in general. It's never really been anything that's like uh, overly big, like like scare or like big thing into horror where it kind of makes you look. But I had received something a couple of years ago. It was like one of those bobbleheads, and it was a Pennywise. I didn't realize that it was a solar thing. So when the lights come on in my room, I would like hear something ticking as I'm like looking through, like shuffling through movies or putting stuff away or whatever. I'm like, what the fuck is that? And I look up, and the head is like bobbing back and forth by itself. And I'm like, nah, man, you cannot stay here anymore. Didn't realize that there's like a solar panel on it that actually like moves it. So I was like, oh, okay, I'm a dumbass.
That's scary. That's terrifying.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yaz, what about you?
Um, Honestly, the same for me. So when I was a kid, my mom worked nights, and it would just be me, my dad, and my brother in the evenings. And we were just constantly going to like the video store, renting movies, and I was just immediately drawn to horror, like probably by the age of like 5 or 6. And same thing with Casey. Like my dad didn't really like he kind of let me watch whatever I wanted. I grew up watching horror movies. I grew up watching like South Park and Beavis and Butthead. Like that was my upbringing. And yeah, I remember distinctly going to the video store, and I found a copy of The Dentist Part 2. And do you remember
Okay.
that cover? It's
Yeah,
like the
yeah.
face with the gums and the nails coming out. And I remember taking it to him and being like, "Dad, I want to watch this." And he was like, "No, I don't think so."
Yeah.
He's like,
There's
"We'll
like a
start you with
point.
something easy." Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
I
Oh
remember like
God, that's
watching,
terrible.
yeah, I watched like, when I was a kid, it was more so like the Halloween movies, like Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, that stuff. But yeah, it started really early. I was like 5 or 6 years old, I think, when I saw my first horror movie.
I mean, even in that, and you kind of mentioning, I guess, with like the dentist too, like, was there a point, at a younger age where it was something that was like a little bit too much, or, maybe you like had to cover your eyes or look away? Like, were there certain movies that had moments like that
Oh
where it's like,
yeah,
I can't take
yeah,
this?
yeah, yeah. There was. I wasn't ever scared of them as a kid, but like the more inappropriate, I guess, scenes, my dad would be like, "Cover your eyes." And I was like,
Oh,
"Okay."
yeah. Yeah.
But
Okay.
yeah, I mean, like that one, I didn't watch actually until I got older. But yeah, I mean, other than that, like there really wasn't a whole lot of like limitations. If there was something cool that we wanted to watch, he was like, "Yeah, sure, whatever." And if it got too graphic, sometimes he would turn it off. But I mean, honestly, a lot of the
Yeah.
stuff was just free game for us.
Okay. Okay. And now, something that I have actually been dying to mention, and I've cut myself off from like messaging either you or mentioning at one point in one of your guys' episodes, you were mentioning being afraid of sharks in a pool, and I think was that you,
That was
Yaz?
me.
No,
Okay,
that might have been
okay,
Casey.
Yeah.
Casey. Okay, so listen, I was trying my hardest to look and see because I've mentioned this in two other interviews with whoever it was. I swear to God, that was a real thing. I watched Jaws when I was 5 years old. That was the first thing I'd ever seen. I remember having to bring like swimming goggles because my neighbors had a pool and I was not going under because there was going to be a shark underneath like the top of that water. And I heard you guys say that and I was like, holy shit, that's insane. I've never heard anybody say that. I was like, wow, that's crazy.
I'm glad to share an irrational fear with you.
Right. I mean, was that? I take it that's from Jaws, right? Or was that at one point like something that happened from the ocean?
So it was from Jaws, and then when Deep Blue Sea came out, I think I was in like second or
Okay.
third grade, which made it so much worse. And we didn't have like a pool or anything growing up, but my grandma, she had like like a shared, like a public pool where she lived. So they didn't have lights. Like it would be super dark at night, so it'd be like these harsh fluorescent lights that kind of flash down on you, but it was
Uh,
super dark underneath. So I'll be honest, it was just embarrassing. But even as an adult, like I'm like, don't think that there's anything in the pool with you when it's dark. Dark water in general, I'm just like hard pass. I don't care if it's a river, a pond, a lake, the
oh my
ocean, a
god.
pool. It's all bad news.
Oh my god.
Same.
I mean, it's and like thinking back, it was a regular pool. I mean, a standard like blue bottom pool to where like there's no need for goggles. Like just looking down, you're going to see what you're going to see. But I
Yep.
remember like I had to bring goggles because this shit is not happening. Nah, that's not to me. And then Deep Blue Sea comes out, and you're like, oh, sharks can jump too. So like sick. Like I'm not even necessarily like just like safe, outside of water. Now these motherfuckers are coming out too. So, okay. And now, as far as, yes, like touching on irrational fears, and even Casey, you can touch on that too further. But what is something, like over the years that you've watched where all of a sudden it just like clicks something and you're like, oh, this is real life and going to happen to me now?
Um, I mean, for me personally, I don't necessarily think this is an irrational fear. And like growing up, I wasn't really like, I didn't develop fears of like certain things watching movies. But when I saw The Strangers for the first time, that made the fear of home
Oh, yeah.
invasion incredibly real for both of us. I think Casey
Mm-hmm.
will like attest to that too. After I
Mm-hmm.
saw The Strangers, I was just traumatized for like
Mm-hmm.
months.
Okay.
Months. It was terrifying.
And you guys touching, I think even in like your episode talking about Hush, that was like a
Hmm.
newer movie, where I was incredibly impressed with, and another like angle to the whole like the strangers thing without being a complete ripoff, where it was like, man, this is uncomfortable. How like just a regular ass house like even isn't safe, and like
Yeah.
yeah. So I have to go back and watch that movie because I haven't seen it in like some years, but yeah, that's like another like situation where very rational, not even irrational. So, but Casey, do you have anything else? I know that you've mentioned sometimes that like horror movies aren't necessarily your thing, or overly gory isn't your thing. But has there been anything?
Yeah. So when I was younger, I had a big issue with like the dark, and I'll be again embarrassing honesty, but it wasn't until I was like in my mid 20s I got over my fear of the dark. It's more like the unknown. So like when Dawn of the Dead the remake came out, again, I think
Mm.
I was like maybe 11 or 12, and then I would always think of that opening scene where that little girl who's zombified is like
Oh.
standing in the doorway, and I'd be like, don't turn over because she's going to be standing right there. Or, and Yaz can attest to this, I do not like when things like crawl at me. I hate
Okay.
that so much. But I mean, it wasn't so that's like a younger kind of like fear that caused. My big fear, which is even more irrational, is being scalped or skinned.
Yeah, I mean, that's it's. I don't think
It
that's a
would be
position
painful, I'm
anybody really
sorry.
wants to be. I know. Have either of you seen Terrifier 2?
Yeah,
That's rough. Yeah, there's
it was rough. Yeah, I mean,
probably some moments that are gonna push you a little bit in that one,
oh yeah.
mentioning the skinning and all. There's you know, like as much as I love, you know, horror and I love like extremity and everything, I was pretty surprised that like that got the push and like the praise like in theaters as it did, and as many theaters as it did too. Like it even came like local, like to my small town too, where I was like, holy shit, like I can't believe.
Hmm.
And after seeing it, that movie is that pushed it pretty far.
Yeah.
I even asked Yaz, I was like, am I going to have an issue with this? Because I had a little bit of an issue, not for all of Terrifier, but, you know, the scene where the girl's hanging upside down. I got no warning, and Yaz has known me for 12 years. She was just like, yeah, no, you'll be fine. And then that came on, and I was like, why do I even ask you for recommendations for
Yeah.
movies?
That
So
was my bad.
and
Yeah.
her tip to me going into Terrifier 2, I still haven't seen it, but I've been so tempted to, is like, oh, just close your eyes if it gets too much for you. And I'm like, yeah, but it sticks with me. That's the problem. It's not like what I see, it's what I'm imagining.
Yeah. No, that's
Yeah,
good.
you know, and you mentioned that too. I almost wonder sometimes if like the moments of like going back as when I was like a little kid and seeing stuff, and like my parents tell me like, oh, okay, cover your eyes. Like, I almost wonder if those moments are more terrifying than what I actually would have seen, because then like you're covering your eyes, hearing this shit going on, or for instance, like you're watching the movie, hearing what's going on, and your imagination just goes wild, and it just maybe even makes it even worse than like if you just watched. It's like, oh, that was kind of silly, or that looked completely fake, and but then your imagination goes, it's like, oh, what am I not witnessing right now? What exactly is happening that I'm not
Absolutely,
seeing?
100%. I think you hit the nail on the head there. Yeah, it's well, and two, you know, when you're remembering it back, it's always somehow 10 times worse than what actually happened in the movie.
Yeah.
I mean, same with
Yeah.
nostalgia when you're like, oh, that movie was so good. And then you watch it 10 years later and you're like, yikes, that was a problem.
Yeah. There was a movie when we were younger, myself and my best friend Ryan, we, you know, constantly were like renting different things and had different things. I remember he had a copy of, have you guys seen The Toxic Avenger, or are you aware of what the movie
Yes.
is? Okay, so he had a copy of that, and it was a VHS copy. And I remember him bringing it over, and it was like halfway through the movie, and it was like this really weird cut where all of a sudden it was just playing the Muppet Babies. And he had like said like, oh yeah, like it just all of a sudden like it just gets to this point, and for whatever reason like the movie turns into this. I'm like, what the fuck? And it was years later to where I realized his parents actually edited the VHS because it was like sex scenes that they didn't want us to see. So for
Oh.
years we're talking to people and they're like, what the fuck are you talking? There's not Muppet Babies in this movie. Like, what are you talking? They can't even do that. There's copyright issues. We're like, no, dude, there is for real. And we had to go years telling people that there was Muppet Babies, and there was not. We had to embarrass the shit out of ourselves with edited VHS tape of Toxic Avenger.
I mean, that
That's
is real
hilarious.
skill, though, of his parents
Yeah,
to be able to kind of like down your like. I mean, you have to
cut it
wonder
in.
what that does to your psyche, though. Like when you're going into a sex scene, it's like, do you just start picturing Muppet
Muppet
Babies?
babies.
I don't know. It is really weird, and like I guess I've never made like the comparison now that I watch the movie, but I can never not think of that. You know, just to the effect of like, God, I don't even know. Like I know you can go in and with like blank tapes, like you could do the old like two VCRs, you know, where you're like duplicating. I'm like, God, they didn't seem like they were even like, I don't know, tech savvy to be able to like do that. But yeah, they got that right at hand. So none of the gore, none of the extreme stuff, but you know the old freaky deaky shit for some reason. Uh, what about your guys' local video shops and movie theaters? Like what, you know, fond experiences come from those things, and you know, maybe even like the horror section of like going to run a video.
Um, yeah, I mean, like I said, going to the video store was like a regular thing for me when I was a kid. I just
Mm,
remember going. I mean, I didn't have like a local mom and pop like cool shop. I just went to like Hollywood Video, I think it was at the time.
okay.
And yeah, I just remember like I would watch everything. Like we'd run a comedy here and there, but I always like just bolted to the horror section immediately. And it honestly wasn't even so much about like what I wanted to rent. It was like just that like the excitement of looking at the covers and like
Hmm.
just showing like my because my brother is 2 years younger than me and I would show him like look at this like try to scare him and yeah like I have such good fond memories of going there. Like I can still picture it to this day what it looked like inside and where the horror section was. And I mean unfortunately now I think the one that I used to go to is like a Hawaiian barbecue place so it's kind of upsetting. But I mean, I just have like really fond memories of that. And, it was really special for me at the time because it was something that I shared with my dad and my brother.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, just good memories all
Hmm.
around.
Okay.
I would say, honestly, pretty similar. We did have a locally, like, family-owned video store right up the street when I was growing up. For those, it was, of course, I mean, at the time, it just constantly cycled out for new family-owned video stores. But it was the first time it's Ghoulies, right? Where they're coming out of the toilet, or
Mhm.
Ghoulies
Yeah.
too?
Yeah.
They
So-
come out of the toilet twice.
Okay.
Or they come out in multiple
I think it's the first one.
Multiple times
Yeah.
in the franchise. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah, exactly. It was the first time I'd seen the Ghoulies slip, and then Jack Frost, where it like shifts,
Oh,
and all of a
yeah.
sudden he
Oh, yeah.
has like
That's
these
a good
big
one.
teeth. Again,
So
Dentist
sick.
too.
Mhm.
So with that, but when that went out, and we were only with like Blockbuster and Hollywood Video, if I think about like Hollywood Video or Blockbuster Hard Enough, I can still smell. Like it is just like such I don't think I'll ever be able to forget it. Like it's just
Yeah.
such a distinct smell. It's so comforting and warm. But I'll honestly kind of piggyback on what you said. It's just you get to a point where you're just excited to go.
Yeah.
You know?
Mhm.
It was more the experience, honestly. I mean, watching horror movies was great, but yeah, just that, like, I don't know, it's just fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there was so many times too where like it might be something that was like a newer, like release or something, where you would have to like pick through the bin of just like a whole bunch of like dingy shit and then finally like possibly find it. Or
Yeah.
there was a story one time I was speaking with somebody. It was kind of funny where like we were like talking the whole nostalgia of it and loving, everything, and like, oh yeah, just the cool memories. And then they were like, wait, do you remember like by chance and this was like a mom and pop shop. They were like, was the like porno section right next to your horror? And I was like, yeah, it was. He was like, was there just like creepy people back there all the time when you're trying? Like, yeah, there was. Shit, maybe I'm like glorifying this a little bit more than what it was. it always seemed like somehow like you were going to like the horror, and it was like the very back, like the light bulbs aren't working, it's dirty, like the carpet is like crusty, and it's just like, God, what are they doing, man? I'm just trying to sit here and enjoy, and there's these fucking weirdos walking around. I don't know. So
Yeah.
luckily, I mean, the Blockbusters and Hollywoods, it wasn't quite like that, but that is cool, and it's something that I almost want. Like, do you guys have any rentals at all, like around you, or is everything gone, like rental shops?
Okay, so funny story actually. Remember the one that we went to? What was
Mhm.
it called? Like Star Video or
Yes.
something? It was like a
Yeah.
mom and pop shop, right?
Mhm.
Like, and yeah, we actually found that like a few years back. And I'm pretty sure it's closed now, unfortunately. But I remember
Damn.
we went and they were actually doing like movie rentals. It was DVDs, but
Mm.
yeah, we went in and we rented some movies. And the same thing with the porn section. Do you remember? It was like in the back, kind of like next to the horror stuff. Or did
Dude,
I only notice
I
that?
think you may be the only one who
I'm a
noticed the
perv.
porn.
God damn it! It's
yeah, it has
unforgiving.
One of those little rooms. And yeah, I remember I was like, oh, okay, not really. It was really quiet when we went, so there wasn't like a whole lot of like weird people going in and out of there. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, that was probably like the last video store that I think I've ever even been to that was actually doing rentals.
I think Video Paradiso does rentals.
Oh yeah, I lied. Never mind. There's another place that they do rentals, right?
I'm pretty sure.
I don't know if they rent out tapes because they do have tapes, but they for sure rent out
Oh,
like
damn.
Blu-rays and DVDs.
Yeah. So it's I mean it's a cool shop too.
Mm-hmm.
It's in
Claremont?
I don't know if anyone's in
California?
California who watches this. It's in downtown Claremont.
Oh, okay. And is it like a grocery store or that has that too, or is that like just like is it solely just like a video shop?
Solely video shop.
It's connected
dang.
to a record store too, so it's kind of like I think they're both like owned by the same people. Person.
Oh, okay. Okay. Now, yeah, that's like around here they don't have like we don't have any like rentals or anything, but there's like a shop that just recently, like in our mall, is like a record and movie shop, and he just opened just a movie shop, and there's constantly people. So it's cool. Like there is that demand, and there is, you know, enough people that are still around that remember like being able to go to rental shops where those things pop up, and they're like, man, I really wish that that kind of came back. So hopefully at some point, like something to some degree, maybe deep like Blu-rays, or I don't know, you know, what exactly they would do, but it'd be cool to see some of that stuff come back because you know, it is like a lot of that experience and a lot of that memory of like going like, hey, I got pizza and pop for the weekend and a couple like movies in the game or some shit. It's just like, yo, we're not out doing drugs and you know, robbing people and you know, just some clean fun.
Yeah,
Now,
definitely.
as far as in horror movies, what comes to mind as far as scenes? Just if you guys each have a couple of scenes that, you know, are forever ingrained in your brain, whether they were, you know, pushed things too far, were just weird and awkward and kind of grimy, something that you know, it made you wonder how they accomplished an effect. What comes to mind for you guys?
So
Yeah.
it's kind of along those lines, but it's more just like really memorable. So the first I would say is that scene in Cabin in the Woods where they drop down and they see all the monsters. I feel like
Oh man.
it was that movie is just like such a breath of fresh air, I think, for the horror genre at that point, because you either had really great movies or you had these like porny, like, you know, D horror movies. And so I think it kind of like was almost like the catalyst for like, you know, better movies.
Mm.
The scene in Martyrs where you know, you get through all the gore and everything, and then you find out there's like an underground society that like sacrifices women basically to speak to God. And
Dude.
then I think the last one would be original Last House on the Left, when the mom realizes that the strangers she let in her house were the people who killed her daughter.
Oh yeah, God,
Those are
God.
good.
Those are. I know. I was gonna say I want to like kind of touch on those, but yeah, you go ahead and then we'll wrap back around.
Mine are like way on the opposite side of of the spectrum.
I love it. Yeah, it's good.
I mean, I'm personally really into like the campy, cheesy, like 80s horror movies.
Mm.
So, I mean, for sure, like one of the first movies that I watched when I really like dove into all that was From Beyond. And
Oh yeah.
that movie in general is just amazing to me. But the part where Jeffrey Combs is sucking out that girl's eyeball,
Oh
I don't know if you
man.
remember that part. Have
I
you seen
do.
it?
Yeah. Yeah.
That part, I just remember watching it for the first time and I was like, holy shit. I was in the room by myself and I was like, is anybody else seeing this? Like, this is fucking wild.
That is.
And
No.
yeah,
Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah. Go ahead.
yeah, that part was crazy. For sure, the first time I watched Society, have you seen Society?
Yes.
Okay. The butthead scene was like, that I remember. I think I texted you after I watched it because I don't think Kasey had seen it yet. And I was like, dude, you need to watch Society. Like, I'm not going to say anything about it. You just have to go into it blind and let me know what you think. And
Ridiculous.
that part is so absurd. And I remember watching it for the first time and I was like, I love this movie just for that scene alone. Fantastic. A+ for me.
Okay.
But another one would probably be The Strangers. I'm bringing that up again. That movie was like so pivotal for me. And I think it's probably the last scene where like it's daylight out and they ask the stranger people like, you know, how come you're doing this to us? And they're like, because you were home. That scared me to death. I saw that movie in theaters and I just remember when they delivered that line, I like sank into my chair. I was terrified. I felt like I was going to die. I was like, we're all goners in this theater.
I remember that being like a movie where I saw that in the trailer, and like oftentimes, you know, things like are kind of spoiled, you know, by trailer moments, or they like show a little bit too much, and that scene being in there, and then going through the experience of the movie and then seeing that scene was like, oh man, like it just added so much of a weight to it of like, God, that's so simple and almost like silly, but then you're going through this experience of what they're going through and it's like, holy shit, like,
Yeah.
it's wild. Like, you know, I think it serves like that purpose too, where like sometimes less is more, where you have a situation like that, it doesn't have to be some crazy, you know, ordinary thing, like something just so simple. Yeah, absolutely cutting through the butthead scene. I feel like over the years I've started like this list of ideas that I have no idea how they were greenlit for a studio to pay for, and Society with that butthead scene is absolutely on that. Like, I don't know what studio at any point picked that up and they're reading the script. They're like, oh yeah, this is straight. Go ahead, waste our money. But then even like Cabin in the Woods, that movie was something like personally where like every release of that movie that comes out, I have to pick up, and that is forever. Every year for the last few years, I've gotten like for my birthday, I'll buy a tattoo like for a horror movie. And I've spent every year trying to think of what monster I'm going to get, and I still haven't gotten a Cabin in the Woods because I'm like, I don't know what I do. Do you do like let's bring that up. Like in that movie, what monster would you end up choosing like as a favorite?
We talked about this, didn't we, in our Cabin in the
We
Woods
did,
episode?
and it changes very frequently.
Yeah, I think mine would be oh my gosh, is she the little fairy girl? What's her name? The sugar plum fairy with the teeth. Oh, that like terrifying to me. But I really like just aesthetically like how she looks, that like juxtaposition of like the cute like ballerina thing with like that scary face.
Wild.
I love it.
It's like a Silent Hill character, but like better.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's a really good one. Just based off my fear, is it a patient or something? But it's the thing that's crawling on the ceiling with its head backwards.
Oh yeah. Okay.
They show it like really briefly.
Yeah, and it's stuck with me ever since.
Yeah.
So.
And that was like the sick thing too, where I think like going into that movie and then having that whole first half that happens, and then all of a sudden there's just like I don't know. I think that's maybe one of my favorite things is like when a movie does that, or something more recent. Like, have you guys seen Barbarian?
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, okay. Thank God. Like I've been trying to get my wife, onto watching this, and she, kind of has like different things where she trusts me sometimes. I'm like, yo, she's been reading different things. She's like, I don't think I want to watch this movie. I'm like, you do. It's awesome. But when that movie comes to like halfway and then all of a sudden, it pans out to where there's this whole different story that's happening. It's like, holy shit. Cabin in the Woods was very much that way too, with me, where the monsters start coming and it's like they're breaking out all of this stuff, and it's just all the small attention to detail too, with like how many creature designs that they do, and they're only on screen for seconds. It's like, holy shit, like that's a lot of commitment. As far as the ballerina, and then there was like a unicorn. There was the what was the mermaid? For whatever reason, that cute mermaid is that's the one that keeps on coming to mind here. That little ugly bastard, but. We'll see. I slept until then. But and as far as martyrs, like with that, like the French extreme and everything, like was there like a moment in time where you guys would go through forums or kind of look at like, oh, what are the most extreme movies that are out there, and what stuff that's really pushing the envelope nowadays?
For me, it was Tumblr at the time. Like, it was a big thing that there was just a big, between the boobs, there was like a lot of horror. And I remember seeing the GIFs where she's like basically coming out of the bathtub. And I was like, what is this movie? So I watched it. And honestly, my dad has always been someone who's big into gore. He's the reason that I watched The Audition.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, with stuff like that, I mean, it did kind of caused me to look for other more extreme movies, but the one that always comes up is a Serbian film, which I just will not watch.
No. Oh God, thank God you said that. I was gonna say
no.
That's a hard pass for me too.
Yeah, I mean that's in a different way. That's another thing where I don't really understand like where that gets greenlit behind a studio, and it's just kind of one of those things where it's like you have certain things that you can kind of make mention, or you can say that a character did this in the past and this is what is happening to them now, and it shows like the revenge aspect or what. But you're bringing in kids, or you're bringing in pedophilia, like it's not necessary, Or even you guys touching on like Last House on the Left. That's always been something where, God, what was the movie? My wife bought me something for Christmas this last year. It was like a big like, man, what was it called? It was like a Vinegar Syndrome revenge film where this girl, it was from the 70s, this girl is basically sold into like a whorehouse, and then she ends up like building these skills and then gets a gun and gets out, and by the end like all these things, she's injected with drugs all this time and she's kept in this house. But I'm just like, I just don't see it. Like there's a lot of different things that you can do in a situation to make revenge worthwhile rather than it being something to do with like hurting children, hurting women, sexual thing. It doesn't do it. Never has. Maybe I'm glad that it doesn't, because that'd be a problem.
Yeah.
But
I think
Serbian
there's like a
films too
fine
much.
line kind of with it.
Absolutely.
Like
Yeah.
we're both sensitive to that also, but like Last House on the Left is one of our favorite movies. But I feel like there's like, I don't know, it's broken up in a way that kind of makes it tolerable for us. And there's other elements of that movie that we really like that best friend dynamic in the movie we really like. And just that will to like survive and fight, you know, like there's good elements
Yeah.
of that movie.
Okay.
Whereas,
Yeah,
you know, like, I don't know, there's other movies that just, it's overload. Like I Spit on Your Grave. I was telling Kasey, I'm like, people that like rewatch that, I don't judge, but people who rewatch it on like a regular basis, I'm like, why?
Well, even
Well,
I don't
much.
understand.
the remake of Last House on the Left, you have this, like, again, her torture and rape scenes, they're intense. Like, they're not something I'm just like sitting there eating popcorn like, oh, this is so enjoyable. But
Okay.
then you get into the remake of it, and it feels like that rape scene is
It's like 9 minutes long, and
That-
even
okay,
touching
thank
on
you.
that, like, does
Yeah.
that make that experience, like, withstanding, like, sitting through that for that long, like, does that make the revenge at the end any more like acceptable than from the original? You know, it's like, I don't think they needed to make this long for it to be like,
No.
yeah, she needs to fuck these guys up.
And so it's just like, you know, at some point, is it like, what is the message you're trying to portray here?
Mm.
Like, is it the point where you're like, yeah, this was a, you know, revenge film, or are you just, I don't know, it just almost feels like you're starting to get into some type of weird, I don't want to, I feel like calling it kink is not correct, but, you know, it's almost like it's a weird gratification thing where I'm like,
Yeah,
you
right.
don't need to do all this. Like, and I agree with you. You bring kids into it. You know, I understand that in some films, like, I mean, what is it? Like Fresh. Like you look at that, and it's, you know,
I don't know what
it's
that is.
you're still getting revenge, but, you know, God, I don't know, he's desecrating her in a different way that doesn't have to do with, like, I don't know. I can get into a whole thing. I'm like, oh, let's not get on this tangent. Forget
Yeah,
it.
well, no, I mean, yeah, for sure, and I love, you know, kind of like digging into that too, and especially, you know, like from like having having like a female perspective and kind of like touching on those different things, and but, you know, like, even I have tons of friends on here. I have different friends who are like, man, you have to watch a Serbian film, and I'm like, I will never. I just don't have the interest of it, you know, and I'm not going to sit here and judge you, but it's like I don't have any need to see it, you know, just based off the things that I've heard too. So,
Yeah.
and like the whole thing with like Last House on the Left, I guess it's been a long time since I've seen the original. So you mentioned like the friend dynamic and the you know, the survival of it and everything. I can appreciate that. I just remember of what of it I remember, you know, with like the rape scenes and shit. I'm like, oh, I don't need to see this. And then seeing the remake, I'm like, I will never watch this again.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
fair.
Yeah.
It's rough, but I mean, a lot of the times, like, I'll like walk away for a minute, come back, you know, like revisit the movie. I don't revisit it often, but I do enjoy it. That's one that I definitely enjoy.
Okay. All right.
I mean, we didn't post the episode on it, but there's this like
We recorded
song
an episode for it too.
where I
Oh,
think there was
okay.
like a song that they created for this, and it's ridiculous, but it's like Krug and Sadie do 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 do. And
For what? Wait, for what?
For Last House on the Left, the original. They're like in the
Oh my
car,
God.
they have the girls, and then Sadie is sitting on Krug's lap, and then there's this weird song that comes on that's like a buddy theme song.
This is actually in the movie, or
This is in the
making it?
movie. Yes.
Oh, I don't remember that.
Yeah,
Jesus.
it's weird.
Wow.
We'll have to find the link, and I'll just send it so you don't have to watch the whole thing. But you can, like, yeah.
That is fun. I mean, so what? Out of a different type of gratification, you have something. You know, we kind of touched on like getting to a halfway point, movies changing in the middle. What are some examples of a movie, you know, maybe that was like kind of cool or good, and then the finale came, and you're like, yo, this movie is awesome. You know, and maybe on the contrary, something, you know, to where the finale of it completely ruined the movie for you.
So for me, I'm gonna touch on Martyrs again because that movie for me from start to finish is fantastic. Like
So
I have
awesome.
no complaints with that movie. And the ending, I remember it just like blew my mind, and I was like, holy shit. Like, I sat and thought about it, like, just in my room, just quiet, like, for like a good hour. Like, what did it
Mm.
all mean? Like, I don't, and that to me was just fantastic. So that's probably one that I really enjoy. A movie that I actually watched recently that is getting a lot of love right now, and I don't know if you've seen it. It's that Speak No Evil movie.
No, I haven't. I've seen a lot
Yeah.
about it, and I've heard a lot about it.
Okay, so I watched it. I was like, okay, let's see what the hype is all about. Everybody is giving that movie so much praise, and it's a good movie. I will say that. But the ending of that movie, it's intense. I'll start by saying that.
Heard that,
Um,
yeah.
Everybody really talked it up, and while it is intense, I was really disappointed by the end of the movie. And I mean, I know everybody's entitled
Mm.
to their own opinion, and I know a lot of people really liked it, but that was one that I was just like, I don't get it. I don't get the appeal. I don't know. I was let down. And I mean, if you
Huh.
ever watch it,
Okay.
maybe you can like let me know what you think, but I wasn't a fan.
Now, do you think maybe it was where seeing all that hype, kind of like built up? I guess that's like something too, where I love this page, don't get me wrong, but there are a lot of times where I'm like, God damn it, I just wish that I didn't have like an opinion at all, going in with this.
Yeah.
And even like to benefit from it, to say Halloween Ends, that movie came and I was just trying my hardest not to see stuff. People were shitting on it. I thought that movie ruled. People, can think whatever. I thought it was rad as hell. I love that it wasn't just like another, just another chapter, and it was kind of like a callback to the original movie. And I've had some people say some interesting things about it, and I'm like, dude, it is a movie. Like, do you realize these things are made up, and you're trying to like say something about somebody's idea of what they think or their thoughts on something? Like, you need to get a hobby.
That's honestly, that's a good point. That's something I didn't even think about it because, like, in some of our episodes, I will be honest, I am so critical of the new Halloweens. I feel
Critical
And you should, be. That's cool. That's awesome. Everybody has their opinion, and that's cool. And like, but people need to realize that like you can disagree with somebody and still be friends and still give a high
Oh,
five. Like, just
absolutely.
because like people have like a weird extreme like idea, even over football teams. I'm like, dude, you're betting on some shit that has nothing to do with you. These motherfuckers don't care about you. What are you doing?
Yeah, no one's going to be giving you an award because you fought for this movie or shit on this movie the hardest, And that is such a good point because I think that we see that a lot is, and this is, I want to make it so clear that this isn't like me trying to, police the horror community whatsoever. But when you start seeing reviews, it is very, this is how it is. And if you like something different, then you're not really a horror fan. That is bullshit.
Right.
If you like Martyrs but don't like The Strangers, or if you like Halloween Ends but don't like the original Halloween, it is for you. You are the viewer. You have to, like, you're the one who's putting the money in the pockets of these people. You should be enjoying what you watch. Or if you don't like it, don't watch it again. But by saying, it's like, I've seen some people go, oh, well, you like this movie? You're not really a horror fan. It's like, oh, okay, well, can you give me a list of rules here so I know what I need to follow to be a true horror fan? I'm sorry. I thought it was, something I enjoy.
I keep on waiting for like an emoji that's like an awe face, like, oh, that's so cute. Like I just want to give that reaction to every one of those situations. Like, you were just adorable. I love it. Thank you for enticing me on how I'm supposed to feel about a fucking movie that you had nothing involved with. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, and also I think too, separating the actor from the movie. You don't know what was going on. Is it their first movie? Is it the writing? Like, I feel like sometimes it just so pigeonholes an actor if a lot of people don't like a movie where they don't get that love again. And then there's some actors who do a great job and you're like, okay, but are you going to be the only person who's ever cast in these movies ever again?
Right. Yeah, I'm trying to think of where this even originated, and I love where it went. To be able to continue on the original statement of it.
Oh, the ending scene
with
the
Martyrs.
Scene that,
Okay, right, and with Martyrs too. That was like a movie that I remember I had to watch a few times, and gladly so, because there was so much going on. And then finally, like when it clicked of what was going on, like instant classic. That for sure. And you mentioned that. Now, as far as did you have another that you were going to touch on too, or one that you were disappointed? I didn't mean to cut that off or have that go further out.
No, it was honestly, there's not a whole lot of movies that I feel like if it's not good in my opinion, like midway through, I'll just shut it off. Like I won't
Yeah.
even finish it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, not really. Like recently, that's probably been the only one, that Speak No Evil movie. It was good. I
Okay.
will say it's good. I recommend people watching it, but I
Mhm.
just didn't care for it. I didn't care for the
Hmm.
ending.
Okay. Okay. Cool. All right. What do you have, Kasey?
Um, yeah, that's you had a really good one. And honestly, I had something in my head before I just like started rattling on about something else.
That's all right. Yeah.
Um, gosh, a movie. Oh, you know what? An ending I really liked that like kind of crushed me, but like stuck with me in a good way is the end of Train to Busan.
Oh man,
Yeah.
I
a
haven't seen
grown
it.
man crying. Uh, uh, ask my wife about a grown man crying. That movie,
I mean,
you're not going to be able to hold it in.
no,
What a rough one.
it is so impactful, and honestly, gosh, I feel like I could just. I mean, that's just one of those movies. I'd say anyone who hasn't seen it, you have to. She hasn't seen it, but I
Holy
think
shit!
it's
Oh
better.
really? Wow.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
better to watch it, I would say, with the subtitles. But like
Yeah.
when you're working at a computer all day, that's kind of hard on the eyes. So I
Yeah.
totally get that. But
I'll get to it one day.
it's a phenomenal zombie movie, and the characters in that movie are great. So I feel bad that it makes me laugh, but a movie where I'm like, oh, this is good, pretty much until the end is The Mist.
Oh yeah.
I get to
Oh
that
man.
scene, and I'm like, I try not to. I'm like, I'm sorry, but like, it's
Oh
just
my
like, it
god.
feels like so ironic that it's like there's such a fight, and then it's like he does that. It's traumatic. It's horrible. You feel for this character, and then like a second later, you're like, are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah. Oh
I
my
forgot about
god.
that.
Dude, that movie was that was I remember reading the book of that. It was like a short story, and I'm just like, I don't know. I mean, it seems cool, and it seems like a cool idea, and that ending, being completely different. That was the director's idea, to bring that whole scenario and that the finale to that. I don't remember laughing, but that ending was wild, and I
It's
appreciate that.
just it's thinking back about okay, I by
Yeah,
the way, I wasn't laughing the first time I saw it. It was
yeah,
more just like shock, like why?
yeah,
Like you couldn't hold out just one more second, like just feel, kind of feel,
yeah.
test what you're feeling right now. And
Right,
and honestly, that scene is him being like such a courageous person, not wanting the people he cares about, these people he just met but has an alliance with, to suffer.
hmm
But it's just like why 1 second? Like the movie just doesn't like let the mood sit. It's like,
right.
okay, this happened, okay, right away. This other thing happens, and you're like, wow, I could not even sit with that feeling for a second before you're like, are you serious? Wow.
I mean, I guess I do love now that I'm thinking like back because this is over like a course of one day, right?
Uh,
Is it?
Maybe like a day or two. It's not very long, I didn't think. I think maybe like tops it was like a
Okay.
3 day situation.
I'll have to go back and watch it because I guess now that I am thinking of that, it's like given the time and the circumstance of like just being this at will survivor and going back to the house and doing all that is a little you're jumping the gun here. You went and we still have things to figure out here. You're only in a couple of days in and killing your whole family. I don't think that's I don't think that was the move.
No.
Now that I
Just
break this
yeah.
down more, I'm like, yeah,
Well,
you
and
might
then
be onto something.
if the creators had given it maybe just like I don't know, not like 5 seconds after that scene to then bring in like the cavalry, I think that would have
Right.
also had more of an effect. It just felt just so black and white and stark and like what was happening that I was like,
hmm
wow, it did kind of throw me out of it that I'm like, all right, this is just how it is. And then
Yeah.
just one last example of this is ending of Cabin in the Woods when she wouldn't sacrifice herself to save the world. Pissed me off.
Right. Okay. Okay.
It's
Just
a
out of
great
this
movie.
the selfishness or what were you like what was the emotion rising from it?
I think it was the selfishness where I understand the whole point. Like, do you really want a world that has to like basically sacrifice other people to keep it going? But it's
hmm
like I do get that and that's horrible. But it's like at the same time they told you only you have to die or only he has to die for the world to like keep on going. And so it's
hmm
like what 7 billion people on this earth and you and your friend just Sorry, Yasmin, but I would definitely sacrifice this for 7 billion other people.
No, I'm not opposed. That's fine.
You're like, well, wait, because actually I was going to say that I wasn't going to, so you're an
Oh,
asshole.
She was like, "Oh yeah, I definitely would."
Yeah.
no, we're
Crossing your
going down
fingers.
together.
I love that. Okay, so as far as like us being fans and having collections and collectibles and different things, if there was something that you guys could take, from a movie, from the past or even something, more recent, and you can keep for your own in a collection, what would that be? What would be something that you would take off of a set?
Oh, mine came to my head like immediately.
Go ahead. I'm
It would
trying to think of
be
mine.
so Demons is one of my
Oh yeah.
favorite movies of all time, and The Mask. If I could have like, I don't know if there were several used in the movie. If I could have one of those masks, I would die so happy. I would be stoked to own one of those. Are
I
you
wonder,
looking at your tapes?
I am. I'm sorry. I'm like trying
even
to
at the
think
prop, I wonder if that thing was kind of sharp, because you look at that and you're like, oof,
Yeah.
that'll nick you. You got to be careful there. So
Yeah.
if you did, you're gonna have to put it in a glass case or something.
Yeah, for sure.
It's a good one. I love that.
Honestly, I think the knife from Scream. I think if I could like keep it in a display case, obviously, but I feel like that would be. I don't know. There's just something about it that is just like so, like representative to the movie. Obviously, the murdering part, but it's like it'd be cool to have.
Yeah, and it's funny too, like when you look into those different things, and I guess touching on attention to detail, and like something with like Halloween or something, with even like the machetes or the knife of like Scream. You look at different things, and you look at like Spirit Halloween, and you look at props, and it's like this is nothing like what was in there. You almost kind of feel like pretentious because you're looking at like smaller things like that, and maybe it's other people of like sports interests or different things, but I feel like horror like connoisseurs even, or just fans in general, look into that type of stuff, and that is sweet. That would be something that would be awesome to have on display. And yet another thing you probably want to be careful with, maybe have that packed away just in case.
Absolutely, yeah. Especially because we're both extremely clumsy, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jesus. All right. So here we are in November already. Halloween is past. We're touching on Thanksgiving, and I wanted to kind of dig into a couple of things here as far as maybe some movies that we're thankful for, and a couple of different like drop boxes, if you will, from that. So initially, tell us about an independent horror movie that each of you are thankful for, and along with this, for people that are watching, if they haven't seen the movies, they can use them as recommendations.
Yeah. Do you want to go first?
Oh, sure.
We talked about it a little beforehand.
Yeah.
Sweet. Okay.
They Live Inside Us by the Witching Season Films. I feel like I always butcher their name, but we originally found them based off their short horror films, and then they ended up creating like a full-length feature off of this that has like a ton of nods to these, short films that they created. If you haven't watched it, it's a super fun watch, and it's obviously a labor of love. So I would tell,
Sick. Okay.
if you come across it, please like support them. They're fantastic.
Awesome. Okay. And is this like a newer movie, or is this something from 90s, 2000s?
This came out in 2020, I believe.
Yeah, this is relatively new. I think it was their first full-length movie, because the previous one was just all like shorts, or we actually discovered them on YouTube. So we watched all of the shorts individually, and that was their first full length, and they're working on another one right now, I believe. Yeah, but just really like awesome, like independent creators, and they're so talented. If you're into like Halloween vibes and like just the fall season in general, like they have these compilation videos also.
Atmospheres.
Yeah, they're just like Halloween atmospheres, and it's basically like Halloween 4, the intro, like on a loop for like how long? They're pretty long, right?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, honestly, everything they do is a labor of love.
Yeah.
Everything is like a love letter to the genre and also to the fall season and the Halloween holiday too. So
sick.
We're
Wow.
fangirls. So
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, that's awesome. And I mean, even after you make your mention shorts, that's something that we're gonna have to touch on too that I didn't even think of. But within the last like 5 years or so, has honestly become like a really relevant thing to horror. That I never really thought much of before, but Yaz, what about you? Independent.
I'm probably gonna have to say Terrifier. I mean, It
Okay.
is like it was. They were both like on the lower side of like budget wise,
Uh-huh.
and I mean it's just cool to me to see how that labor of love like what it's doing now. Like Terrifier 2 is still going strong. I'm pretty sure in theaters right now,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
and I just think like I know like Damien Leone and the whole cast and crew like they really put it all out there, especially in the second movie, and I just think like it's inspiring too, for filmmakers that are trying to get their work out there. I think it's
Hmm.
cool, and I think it's rad that they're just getting the recognition that they deserve.
To create such an
Okay.
iconic
Yeah.
character too.
Oh yeah,
I feel like that doesn't happen every day, and Art the Clown is definitely kind of a standout character. From a lot of the characters we have now.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. My buddy Dima says I could not finish Terrifier, and this is funny.
I don't blame you.
So, and even touching on that movie, oddly enough, and this is a hot take, I was not huge into the first Terrifier. And honestly, I didn't really even want to see the second one, just because like I was like, this movie was okay. There was that butcher scene or whatever, but I was like, I'm not really back in this. And I was glad that I went to go see the second one because dude he understands, like he gets what it is that's going on. The director also wrote the movie, also did all the effects for it. It's like you're killing it, man. That's awesome. And I was glad that I gave it that too. And that's kind of like one of those hot takes where I've had people, like I've gotten in conversation and it's a half hour later and I'm like, why are we still talking about the fact of that I don't like something and you love it? Like, let's just move on. You know what I'm saying? Like, what about hamburgers? You enjoy those too? Say, let's talk about that. Like, what are we doing here? Come on. But no, yeah, I appreciate with Kasey mentioned in shorts too. Um, Looking into some of that stuff, the impact that you can see from somebody making a short that's 12 minutes long and absolutely pulling off everything that you need to. I've ended up reaching out to a lot of directors who have made shorts just because of all the stuff that is for free out on YouTube, and you pull up and you're like, man, this is better than the majority of the horror that's going on coming from studios. Like how are you not getting recognition for something? There's one I would recommend called Downstairs. Have you guys ever heard of that? It's the Box Leitner brothers. They're out of California. Sam and Lee Box Leitner. They have a movie called Downstairs, and it's about a cop who is at a hotel, or he's a security guard, and it's very Evil Dead, very slapsticky at moments, very just like this character is an absolute goofball, and it works. It is great, and I can't recommend it enough. But touching on like short films, like there's some great stuff coming out from all over the world, France, all sorts of different stuff. So I love that, and thank you, also for the mentions too, as far as for the independent movies, and I feel like that's important for people to go out and support that stuff, so that this doesn't fall by the wayside. What about an '80s movie? So you guys, '80s horror movie that you're thankful for. What comes to mind?
80s is my bread and butter.
I was like, go for it, girl.
Okay.
I mean, so Demons is one of my favorites. That's an
Mhm.
80s horror movie. But there's two that I feel like compete for the top spot for me, and I think they always will. One of them being The Gate. That
Oh
movie is
yeah.
just, it's so like, it's so near and dear to me. Like, that's one of those movies that I can put on and it just brings me so much comfort and like tranquility, and it's just amazing. And that one and Ghoulies too. I love my Ghoulies, and that one specifically, I'm like a sucker for that like carnival like kind of fair like setting in
Yeah.
movies, and it just has it, and it has it all, and it has it's really like silly. I think it's a little more like comedy driven than the
Hmm.
first one was, because the first one I feel like was a little more like I don't know, not necessarily serious, but part two and part three are where it gets just like wacky and off the walls, and I love those
Right.
ones.
Goes to
But
college and
yeah,
gets a degree out of whatever else. Yeah, that's awesome. I love that.
yeah, those two probably are my favorites.
Okay. All right. Casey, what about you?
Um, Honestly, The Shining. While I
Okay.
want to, bring Stanley Kubrick back, and I will literally punch him in the face for what he did to Shelley Duvall. But I love The Shining. We actually saw The Shining. It was screened at the outside of the Overlook Hotel, so we actually traveled. What's that?
Whoa.
Put that on.
Oh, that was
Myers House,
yeah, Myers House
NC.
NC. Yeah, they put on like screenings in movie locations, so we got to watch it at, I mean, basically
Holy
like the
shit!
Overlook
Wow.
Hotel.
And it was snowing. It was the beginning
It
of
was
December.
amazing.
It was a really cool experience. I mean, and honestly, the film, and I know Stephen King hates it, but it's just, I think it's just a really strong movie.
Totally. Absolutely. Yeah, there's so many different things. And something that comes to mind with that movie that for whatever reason always like touches on is I remember watching that movie so much when I was younger. And then years later, I don't know if it was just like a family thing where like we like popped it on, it was like winter or whatever, we're just drinking, having fun. The scene where they're in the hallway and the guy in the bear costume like pops up and then the hotel attendant, like kind of like leans from like laying in the bed. It was just years where I was like, how did I miss? That is so uncomfortable. And like, it was crazy because I actually almost got that bear tattooed. Not happening. Not this freaky motherfucker gonna be on my arm the rest of my life. No way.
You don't want
But
to start a
there's,
furries tattooed on your arm?
yeah. I mean, so many like small details with that movie too, and even something more recently, where people have such a hard on with like Hereditary. I get it. That movie is amazing, and there's so many different things where like it's funny where you have something that's like that's so refreshing and anything that you can ask that's just like a plain slasher. But then you have movies kind of like that where it's just kind of like on this whole other level. Like, holy shit, how are there people that exist that do different stuff, or all the conspiracy theories behind The Shining that have come out over the years, and
Mm-hmm.
what different scenes mean, or you look into different things and they're like, oh, do you see how this square is half green and half da 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 da? It's like, how do you come up with this shit? Like, do you work for a living? Like, how did this even come about? God. But yeah, I love both of those movies. So that's good recommendations there. What about '90s horror? You guys, what are you thankful for that came out of the '90s?
That's on
Scream.
you.
Yep, I love 90s horror.
Scream.
Scream. Always.
Totally.
It's my favorite franchise.
Did you get to see it in theater?
I didn't. No.
No, me either. I had to steal my sister's copy. She was away and my mom was at like the store or something, and I remember for whatever reason like I wasn't allowed to watch it, and I had to like peek into her room and I had to pop it in really fast and just like listen for like the door opening. And that movie was a lot for the first time watching it. I remember that for sure.
Agreed. It came out in 96, didn't it?
Yeah, 96.
Yeah, so
96. So I was like 8.
I was 4. Yeah, so
Yeah.
I was
definitely
5.
definitely not watching it then. But I growing up, I had like an older sister figure, Stephanie, and she always introduced me to all these horror movies. And she's actually the one who I watched, I believe, Scream with for the first time. And I think I was probably like 7, which isn't
Okay.
much older. But you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it was just, I mean, it was awesome.
I
I
The
don't think you want our rankings on that.
Oh no. We'll use that for another episode. You guys do a thing and get a complete dig down on that. What is, as far as Yaz, what is your '90s?
Honestly, probably same. It would be Scream. Like when I
Okay.
think back to like what movies were like super pivotal for me in the 90s, I rented it with my dad and my brother when I was a kid. Probably shortly after it was like out in theaters, and I just remember watching it, and that opening scene blew my mind. I was like, what? Like the movie's like just starting and this is like this is crazy. It was so
Mm-hmm.
intense, and I just, yeah, like that movie really just like catapulted like the love I already had for horror, and I was like, I just need to watch more. Like this is insane. Um Another like honorable mention, I don't know if this is considered horror though, but it like played a really big part in like my upbringing, would be The Crow for sure.
Oh, good one.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I consider it a horror movie. It's kind of
Mhm.
creepy, right?
Super sad.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
pretty devastating, but
I feel like as much of like a drama or I guess I really don't even know what you would like categorize it. A comic movie, was The
like
Crow a
action,
comic?
I guess.
Yeah, maybe
Yeah,
an
it
action
was.
movie, yeah.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think there's as many horror elements, as there's as many people dressing up as Jason Voorhees as there is,
Yeah.
the Crow. So absolutely, yeah, that movie was very sick. Are they still developing something on either a reboot
I
or
thought
like a
so.
sequel?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Wasn't like Bill Skarsgård supposed to be? Is
I
that
thought it
right?
was Jason Momoa.
Jason
He played-
Momoa?
What?
Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
What?
I don't know.
Fucking got on steroids? What is happening here? What? Come
Okay,
on now.
to be
You know,
fair, the
You
original
have the skinny
Crow
white
was
guy, and then
kind
you
of
have The Rock
buff.
playing the Crow. Like, what's
He
happening?
He was built. Oh, in the original one, I feel like he had muscles under those long tees.
Did he? Oh, okay. Different attention to details here.
Oh my god, I thought it was Bill Skarsgård, but maybe I don't know. Who knows? Maybe
I could kind of see him. Yeah.
Maybe it was like, I don't know, April Fool's joke I was just really late on. I'm not sure.
Yeah. I mean, it would be entertaining for for comment sections to see if Jason Momoa played the Crow. That would be sick. I love that. Let's just leave it at that. And if that's not the case, then people will fall into that. That'll be funny.
Yeah.
What about a 2000s horror?
I have one.
Go for it.
I remember watching, and I think it was in 2003 when it came out. We rented it, like me and my cousins, I think, and it was High Tension,
Oh,
the
dude.
French movie. I remember watching that and just being like blown away by it. I hadn't really seen anything like that, and I hadn't really dug into like French extreme horror yet.
Mhm.
So that one for me was like it blew my mind. I was like, holy shit, now I need to watch like all of the French horror movies. And that's, to this day, it's probably one of my favorite like subgenres. But yeah, that one was like really pivotal for me because it has that really, like, you've seen it, right?
Oh yeah. Yep.
Okay, so it has that really, I just want to make sure I'm not talking about it and nobody has any idea
No,
what I'm
No, I
saying.
love High Tension.
It has that like really gritty and like unpolished kind of feel to it. And that's something that I'm really drawn to now. And I feel like I hadn't really seen that too much in horror. I think the only thing up to that point might have been like Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yes.
That has
Yep.
that really raw and gritty feel to it. So I remember watching it and I was like, whoa, this is really fucking cool. And like Maniac now is one of my favorite movies, and the same thing. It kind of, the original has that really like just kind of nasty, grimy feel to it, and I really
Absolutely.
like that.
Yeah. There's
I'm
Maniac
sorry.
is like one of those movies too, where even though not like, well, I guess it is kind of like sexually driven, but like not like
Yeah.
rapey or not anything, but like there's a lot of moments in that movie where that dude, I'm trying to think of Joe Spinelli, I think that's the guy's name that played.
Mhm.
That guy, man, he makes you uncomfortable for sure. Like there's
Yeah.
a lot of moments in that movie where it's like somebody asked to watch that. I'm like, I don't know. We could, or we could just watch Critters, and maybe have like fun.
Critters is good
Not
too.
get absolutely depressed.
Yeah.
All right, Kasey. Sorry. What was your selection?
I'm gonna have to go with High Tension as well. High Tension is a French film. Is that
Yeah.
correct? Man, they just do it
I
like
think.
no.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, it's kind of similar to Martyrs in the way where it starts as a completely different movie and I feel like turns into something else. Like, I
Yeah.
did not expect the ending whatsoever when I originally saw it.
Okay. Yeah.
Also, hi, Yasmin's mom.
My mom's
Okay. And this kind of segues into this next question too, as far as mentioning horror remakes, and before kind of touching on that, you mentioning High Tension. Alexander Aja, I believe, is the director that was that movie. He did the remake of The Hills Have Eyes, which,
Oh,
dude,
that's another honorable mention for me.
So
That
good.
remake is so good. Of all the like horror remakes, I would put that one at the top for myself.
it's the
personally.
best. It's the best.
Yeah.
And we were going to touch on horror remakes. So yeah, the Hills Have Eyes. I can't remember how many times I saw that in theater. Just at the end, this like scrawny fella who initially you're kind of like, I don't think he's gonna be able to pull this off. It almost seemed like, yeah, I can see he went through the situation and now, he's like not completely hulked up and, on steroids, and yeah, he can pull this off. And man, such a cool movie. I agree. So as far as remakes, you mentioned The Hills Have Eyes. Does anything else come to mind as far as something that you're thankful for, or even a movie that you're like, this was a bad decision?
I really liked Evil Dead and the Texas Chainsaw
Yes.
Massacre remake. I thought both of
The new
those-
one or the? Oh wait,
I
no,
think
the new
it
one was like a sequel. Shit, my
I
bad.
think that Texas Chainsaw.
2003?
Yeah, I think it's 2003.
So
um,
good.
Yeah. that was one where I watched that movie so many times because again, it came out, I was a little bit younger. I hadn't seen the original until I was like later in my teens. So that was like my first introduction to Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and that one is just gross. The remake
Dude,
from the early 2000s is just it's tough.
Yeah.
But
haggard.
I definitely the Evil Dead one. I'm really appreciative for.
I love that. Yeah, I agree. That was one movie where I was like a little nervous when they mentioned redoing that, and then they're like, oh, but it's cool. Like Sam Raimi is a part of it, and this first time director is really getting. I was nervous, and honestly, that was a huge movie that like I am so glad that got made how it did, and also a lot of really really disgusting shit in that movie. The tongue and the hand part that's gonna get. What are we doing? Like,
They just keep throwing duct tape over everything too. Like in this house, they do not have a single bandage. They're not using a shirt. They're like, oh, you have a hole in the hand. Let's just wrap that up in some duct tape.
what a great mention. Yeah, there's and, that was good. That was good. Yeah, honestly, after that movie, I feel like they should market if they're ever doing a special edition of that movie again, like a Evil Dead remake 2012 or whatever it was, duct tape, just for anything. You have your pipes freeze over in your house, your hand gets cut in half. Jesus Christ, that was awesome. Thank you. That was perfect. What about a character? So as far as I know, you guys have mentioned touching on hunky boys. The final girls. What about a character that you're thankful for out of a horror movie? Oh, that was funny.
Okay, Jess Bradford is a character I'm very thankful for. She's honestly, before there was Laurie Strode, there was Jess Bradford from Black Christmas.
Oh shit. Okay, I was like, I can't think of who this is. Man, that movie is absolutely wild. I love. What did you think of the remake of that?
Okay, so I know that this is a controversial statement.
There's
one
two remakes,
from
aren't there?
yeah.
Okay.
So love the one. I think it was 2006, 2005.
Yeah.
Love that one. Wasn't a huge fan of the newest one, only because I feel like it strayed pretty far from like the source material. I think had it been its own standalone movie, I think it would have been way better. But honestly, man, people really, really hate the 2005 remake,
Yeah.
but I love that movie. He makes skin cookies and then eats them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, come on.
Tasty.
In the remake?
Yeah, and gosh, I feel bad for saying
Or
the
I
early
guess
2000s one.
The early
Yeah.
2000. Okay, so the original he doesn't do that though, right?
No, I don't think so.
I
think
don't
it's
remember that. Yeah.
no, it's a lot
Yeah,
more
okay.
tame gore wise.
I must not have saw either of the remakes of that though. Okay, so Black Christmas. I love that. I love that. Okay, Yaz, what about you?
I mean, can I say a villain? Because in general,
Yeah.
there's one person, I guess, character, and that would be Michael Myers for me. Halloween was my earliest memory of watching horror movies, so yeah, he's my number one forever.
Okay, and so have you seen Halloween Ends?
Mhm.
Okay, so I'm anybody that's watching that hasn't seen the movie, I guess this is going to be kind of something. One thing that I really appreciated about the movie when I was initially watching was, even though as corny as it was, I was kind of feeling like when the whole like well scene or was going on, or them being in the sewer like Pennywise and they're like fighting or whatever, when he was like looking at him and you could see Corey in like the reflection of his eye, I felt like it was touching back to the whole like aspect of like the shape, like an entity, like an evilness, as opposed to it just being like a body form that I thought was like, holy shit, this is really sick. Now this kid, even though Weasley like is almost having this like spirit, passed on to him. That was one thing that I thought was kind of cool, where a lot of people really shit on that, and rightfully so. It's kind of, silly, but from that original movie, and just kind of thinking of like the whole idea of like the shape as opposed to it being like embodied in a person or a personality, I thought that was really cool. And Michael Myers, is just sick. You're going to have a harder time, finding a cooler villain too, for sure.
Yeah, and it's funny that you mentioned that actually, because my whole take on that was it kind of felt like a callback to like end of Halloween 4, like beginning of Halloween 5, I guess, how the, like, I guess, I don't know, like his evilness like kind of transferred into Jamie's character. So
Yeah,
I thought
yeah,
that was
yeah.
interesting that they kind of
Okay.
like, kind of the same concept in a way.
Yeah, totally. Yeah,
Which I mean, yeah, I enjoyed Halloween 4 a little bit more, but
yeah.
they were
That's
cool. I mean,
for
yeah,
another conversation for sure.
yeah.
Casey, what about a villain for you? What is somebody that's stood out through the test of time over time?
Ghostface. I love Ghostface.
So
I love
sick.
that it can be pretty much whoever.
Yeah, it's from anybody dressing up as far as a Halloween costume to my dog next year. We actually got a ghost face costume for my pit bull, so
That's
she's
amazing.
she's just gonna be dressing up and no big deal. Thank God for Spirit Halloween for including the pups too.
Seriously, I didn't even know that. I may have to kind of steal that from you and do it for my dog.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I don't. They had we did Pennywise this year. They had another one where it's like you put a wig on and then it has the costume and like the front legs go into the legs of it and there's like arms that pop up and it holds a balloon. Stupid, absolutely stupid.
I love
and
my
then
dogs
the
for costumes, so
yeah,
I love it.
Hold on, I'll grab the Scream one. Hold on a second.
You should do that.
Do you remember the Scream mask that you squeeze in all the blood comes
Yeah,
out?
my
So
dad
good.
had that.
So as ridiculous as you would think of it in imagination, it's even more so in actual real life.
Oh my god.
How
So,
freaking cute.
and this is basically what my dog looks like too. So the mask sits on top of their head and partially in their eyes, so they're pissed the whole time. And then you have
so
the little,
funny.
the screen ready knife.
That is so cute. I love that.
She's gonna fucking hate it, but that's all right. We'll have fun. All right. Well, so as far as your guys' podcast, so you guys end up recording, making episodes, you guys releasing stuff, kind of breaking down. Where is that initial, idea as far as just having some fun and kind of, getting down like your own thoughts onto a platform like that?
Well, I mean, it initially started off, like, before we even started the podcast, we would hang out and we would just find ourselves talking about horror movies, like, all the time. And I don't know if you mentioned it or I mentioned it, but I was like, we should probably just record it and do a podcast and see what happens. And honestly, like, I am so grateful for the fact that we even did it. I mean, we always joke that we're like super inconsistent with our podcast.
It's not even a joke. It's just the truth at this point.
But I mean, it's something that we do. It's like a passion project for us. We don't do it for the sake of like cranking out episodes just for the sake of doing that. Like we do it when we have time and when we, want to do it. And yeah, I mean, that's basically how it started. And then from that point, like, we started gaining like a little bit of a following and we started making like really awesome friends and collaborating with people. And it opened so many doors that I didn't even know exist. I had no idea there was a horror community or that people, people were posting about the stuff that we like. And so that was like honestly the best part of doing all of this. And like recording episodes is great because we get to hang out and talk. But I mean, in general, doing stuff like this is like the real reward, I think, for both of us.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's been, I know we don't have like a huge catalog, but we have been doing this since beginning of 2019. And I think too, it's, selfishly more than anything, it's like a time capsule for Yaz and I. Like we get to record things at different points in our lives. Like Yaz and I have been best friends for 12 years. Like, it's just, I get to go back and I get to hear about, just you basically grow with us when you listen. Like in 2019, it's unhinged and it's weird and it's silly. And then I feel like sometimes the older we get, the more like clear our thoughts are where we're like, yeah, we like it because of this. And it sounds like maybe a little more cohesive and intelligent instead of being like, would you rather make out with Freddie or Jason?
Yeah. And sometimes that stuff has to come up too, You're like, well, you have to break it down. Yeah, dear Lord. I mean, and it is fun too. And I love that you mentioned too, as far as it being like that, that sense of like a time capsule and kind of like going back and looking at different things like that too. And over time, kind of learning, well, I might trim this down a little bit, or I might, have this different idea of how I want to explain something, without it being overly aggressive or Do you guys do a lot of like editing as far as like post, or is it something where you end up taking the conversation and there it is?
Oh, this is a sore spot for me.
Uh oh.
I used to like so antagonize basically like the editing process. I wanted sound quality to be perfect. Like if we're together, we're gonna have two separate mics and things like that, trying to figure it out, and then kind of doing it on an outdated laptop and figuring out Audacity as we went. Now it feels like a lot more easy. We just throw it up on Skype because we're like 45 minutes, an hour away, and it's just like, you know what? If there's spaces we need to cut out, that's the extent of what's being cut out.
Okay. Okay. I with doing this and doing like the interviews initially, there's been kind of like ebbs and flows and different things as far as like ideas with editing. And I think really it wasn't until I had gotten pretty well into like listening to Joe Rogan's show, whether or not I agree with everything. But I always appreciated the fact of that he just threw up. It wasn't like all these zooms and whams and close ups and wahoos. And, I appreciated that it was like, hey, this was a conversation that I had with a guy for an hour. We dug into this. If you're interested, I hope you enjoy. And I thought that was really sick, just out of like an integrity standpoint. And then also, as far as like with this dealing with guests, oh, hey, we had an hour and a half long conversation and I trimmed it down to 12 minutes. I hope that people's attention gets to grab it. Like, I'm not doing this for people's attention. If people want to listen in and people want to, dig into it, I appreciate the guest time. So it's like, I don't want that to be something where it's like, oh, sick. I'm glad that I wasted an hour of my time and used 10 minutes of it, for whatever flash grab that people with as much ADHD as me have, just trying to look into listen. So,
and you're getting the total context
that.
too,
Mm-hmm. Right.
I think that we found our rhythm more so recently, and I feel like, because a lot of our episodes are predominantly just one movie as our focus, and I mean, that's fun for us, but I feel like we do a lot better when we do our, as we call it, our shoot the shit episodes, where we literally just talk about whatever's going on, like in the horror genre, like what we watched recently, and just really just go and talk. And I find that it's easier for Kasey because she does all of our editing, and I feel like it's been easier for you, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Now that like we just kind of like the same thing, like you were saying, we just let it flow, and we don't really cut anything out anymore, like the way I feel like we used to, maybe.
Yeah.
And it's just, I feel like we found a really good groove and a rhythm now, so recording has been a lot easier for us.
And,
that's awesome.
Anyone who's listening, like, you're basically like a fly on the wall for two best friends who just want to talk about horror movies. Like, we love to talk to like other people. Like, we'll get messages, and I'll be honest, Yaz is a lot better with like the social aspect of things. Like, she's definitely just such a bubbly person and so fun to discuss anything with. So if you're talking like 99% of the time, if you're talking to someone on the Worst Horror Podcast Instagram page, it's this lovely lady right here. But I mean, I feel like that's kind of like one of the comments we got from one of our friends in I Hope You Suffer podcast is he started listening to us because it didn't feel strained between the two of us. It wasn't like two strangers trying to figure out what it is. Like, there's just a lot of care and a lot of love.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that is something that like always kind of brought me to and sending, like a couple of episodes to my best friend Ryan where I'm like, dude, this just sounds like me and you kicking back and like talking like, why don't we ever do this? And his lazy ass just doesn't want to invest in like a phone or having to come over to my house, which is like 10 minutes away. I'm like, these motherfuckers live an hour away, dude. Like, this is not that hard. Oh, well, I got to drink beer. I can't drive. So it is cool though, and I appreciate that, and that bleeds through as far as the you kind of mentioning that it's not two people who are like, so let's fill up the silence. Like, what size poster is that over there? Like I like that. Like it's just kind of catching up and hearing almost kind of like a. Yeah, I guess you hitting it on the head with like a fly on the wall of just kind of like touching in and hearing two friends, digging into some shit. So it's awesome. I mean, I appreciate it. As many goofballs as there is, talking shit all the time and posting negativity out here. I love the fun of this community, and I love the entertainment and the aspect of how I don't know, for how many like horror movies that are out there and how many things that are just kind of like basic knowledge, you know, how many different looks that you have, or how many different, you know, sites that, you know, different people have as far as like, oh, this detail, or this knife I thought was cool in this movie. And it's like, oh yeah, okay, you know. So hearing different people's thoughts and ideas on things is awesome. And you guys really break that down. I hope you suffer. You mentioned that Neon Brainiacs was another one where that feels like me and my best friend listening to them and listening to their work. Like those guys are ridiculous too. And there's so many, you know, different fun things out there. So what now, do you guys have other or other episodes that you guys have done, or where, what are you going to be doing? What are you going to be doing next, do you think?
We're actually working. We're going to be recording an episode this week. Actually, we're doing another like smaller film, like an indie film. It's called Curse of Crom. It's on Tubi TV.
Oh yeah.
Peacock. I think there's another one, but these are if you have a chance, watch it on Tubi. It's free. I mean, it's just a cute movie that we want to like go over. I know people hate hearing the word cute when it's for horror, but it's just it's a good like easygoing movie where you're not like I could not watch The Strangers constantly, but I could watch this movie over and over again.
Awesome. That's sweet. And that's awesome. I haven't seen it yet. I do know what you're talking about, and I've seen different people posting it on here, and I'll have to check that out as well.
The monster, I think that the God, what are the effects? It's not
Practical effects.
Practical effects.
Uh-huh.
I think if you're going to go and watching it, really give a lot of extra attention to that, because you can tell a lot of love went into it.
Shit, it's awesome. Very cool. I was thinking it was like a slasher. What is it called again?
Curse of Crom.
Yeah, I don't know why I was thinking that was like maybe I'm thinking of something else. Shit. Now, I mean, you mentioned it's a monster movie. That's where I'm like, okay. I was going to watch it next month, but this will be on tomorrow. So we'll pop that on. All right. So as a finale here, I wanted to have some fun. I know on one of the episodes here, you guys had mentioned nothing good happens after midnight. And this was something, you know, where I wanted to kind of go off of that. And if you guys were in charge, you were writing and directing a movie, and you were making a movie called Nothing Good Happens After Midnight, what would this movie be about? And then take this title and do something where maybe it would be like a throw off, or like a Barbarian situation where you see the title and you're like, oh, I did not see that coming. What is this movie going to be about?
Gosh,
That's
that's
such
a
a
good
good
question. So the first thing that comes to mind, just based off of a personal experience, would maybe be like a creepy stalker situation.
Okay.
I don't know. That's just the first thing that comes to mind, because I think of something that happened to me like a few years ago that really creeped me out. I don't know what the ending twist would be, but it would probably be something along those lines, because I mean, really, like, creepy stuff happens after midnight, and something really creepy happened to me not that long ago. So
I mean,
it's kind of where my brain
the
goes.
twist could technically be, if you're going more into the urban legend, like maybe that person you think is a stalker, but they're trying to protect you from something that they see.
That's a good one.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. I love, and you mentioned that, it makes me think of the scary stories. One of the stories in the books. Have you read those books, or do you remember those books at all? So the one story where the person is driving home at night and the person behind them keeps on flashing the lights. Do you remember this one?
That one scares me so
Dude,
much. That's a good one.
so awesome. But it was funny because like you had mentioned that, and I was like, man, why has there never been somebody who's made a movie called that? Like, that is a sick title and just kind of enticing, but you could like throw something where initially thinking of the title and going into a movie, you guys will just have to make it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'll toss all this shit out, and then, you know, we'll get a hold of some producers or whatever and get some actors out there.
It'll be, we'll collaborate on it.
Yeah, for sure.
Make it short, yeah, for sure. No, this has been so awesome, ladies. Thank you so much. I appreciate you guys taking the time and the show. Keep it up and keep going for sure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
us.
This has been like, I'll be honest, we were very nervous to start this because we weren't sure, but you know, you do a great job with these interviews, and thank you for making us feel comfortable. And so thank you so much for having us on.
Yeah, totally. And we'll do it again. You know what I'm saying? I kind of initially had this month for like a Friendsgiving type thing where I was going to have a bunch of, friends pages on here, but I wanted to, holler at you guys because it's been quite a while that we've been trying to get this figured out, and I'm glad that it did. So This has been so sick. Thank you so much again.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
For anybody watching too, this will be edited within like the next like month or so. I'll have this up on YouTube and I'll put up a link, and yeah, we can stay in touch and let me know if there's ever anything that you guys need from my side.
All right.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
You.
All right, take care. You guys enjoy.
Bye.
See ya. Yeah.
He's a lo-fi horror guy. Yeah, he's kind of a guy, but he is so lo-fi a horror guy. Yeah. Lo-fi horror guy has been recorded in front of a live studio audience.